Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to All in Texas Football, and welcome back to our spring position previews. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy CJ Vogel. And today we're breaking down specialists. Yeah, y'all didn't think we was going there. You thought we were just going to do offense and defense. No, we will do the third phase of football where we do these special teams. We'll talk about punting and kicking, also get into the return game as well. Before we do that, though, let me tell you about one of our sponsors for our position previews this spring is our friends over at Ernie.com. That's right, folks. March Madness is finally here, and yeah, your Longhorns are going dancing. And so is the Ernie Tourney, the first ever intercollegiate bracket challenge. Now, think you've got the best bracket? Well, prove it against Oklahoma, Baylor, Texas A&M, and the entire Big 12 and SEC fan bases. The school with the most points takes home the Ernie Cup, and the highest scoring bracket wins $5,000. That's right, folks. 5 big ones. Texas fans, this is your chance to show your knowledge. Don't let OU, A&M, or anyone else take the crown. Rep your school and bring the Ernie Cup home. Download the Ernie Sports app or go to Ernie.com to enter right now, folks. So check it out. That's Ernie.com or go to the Ernie, get the Ernie app, the Ernie Sports app, and you can sign up for their bracket challenge. Thank you very much to Ernie.com for being a sponsor of our spring position previews. All right, let's get right to it, CJ. So talking about special teams, we got to talk kicking game first. Let's start with the place kicking duties, which at the end of the season became very controversial. Bert Auburn essentially lost his job to Will Stone. Will Stone never really had a chance to prove himself in that role, but now going into the spring with no transfer portal acquisitions in the kicking game, it looks like that the Longhorns, or at least for place kicking and field goal kicking, looks like the Longhorns are going to let that competition play out in the spring.
Yeah, I'm sure Texas fans watching at home are maybe a little perplexed as to why Texas didn't go out and get a transfer portal kicker. But hey, that just must mean that they're expecting a bounce back from Bert Auburn. They really like what Texas has with Will Stone. Of course, those were the two that Texas decided to roll the dice with later in the year. We obviously talked about the struggles Bert Auburn had late in the year, and Texas did bench him for Will Stone in that college football playoff semifinal against Ohio State. What's the big thing here, Rod, is will there be enough in the spring to know that the kicking situation is going to be resolved?
Yep.
Because you don't have another portal opportunity other than the one in April to go out and get a portal guy. So if Texas likes what they have, that's who they're going to rock with in 2025. If not, you're going to see them very quickly say, hey, whoever's in the portal, we're going to make a play for you to come join this 2025 team. The one thing I wanted to mention, Bert Auburn, look, he had been hovering right around 82% his first 2 years as a Texas Longhorn. 2024 took a big step back down to 64%. He was 16 of 25. He was 6 of 14 on kicks beyond 40 yards. For his career, Rod, those numbers don't get much better. How about 24 of 39 for about 65%? Of course, Texas would like to be punching those, drives, those possessions in for 7 points, but we talked about it. When those games get tight down to the wire in the playoffs, you're going to need those 3 points anytime you can add them. And evidently, again, SEC championship game, and later on, we saw how impactful those misses were for the Longhorns.
Yeah, I mean, I almost cost you against Arizona State, definitely cost you against Georgia in the SEC title game. I mean, the margins right now for Texas are so slim because you're right there on the cusp. Field goal kick can be huge. I mean, how many programs around the country are paying big-time dollars to field goal kickers?
Right.
In the NIL game? Something tells me Texas is one of the few schools that could afford to do so, but maybe they have a lot of confidence in Bert Auburn and Will Stone, like you said, coming back, having that bounce-back campaign. I'm with you, though. That is something that concerns me for Texas, considering the red zone issues. Now, fix the red zone issues, and we don't really care about the field goal kicking. It doesn't matter as much. Because you've had red zone issues the last 3 years, that field goal kicking, especially for Texas right now, I think it's even more pivotal. So getting back to the kicking game, there is good news in the kicking game, though. Texas did get a transfer punter. Now, punting is also another area where Texas was lacking last season. When looked at the punting, and how about this for the punting last season? How about this little nugget? So Michael Kern, who handled the duties for the Longhorn, he finished last among SEC starters with a 37.8 yard net punting average. He only pinned in opponents inside their own 20, the third fewest times out of any regular starter in the country. And if you go look at it, only one school, SMU, averaged worse defensive field position than the Longhorns among the 15 Power 4 teams that ended up with double-digit wins. Those are some brutal numbers. And I think because of that, Texas went out and they resolved this issue immediately with urgency by bringing in one of the best punters actually in the country. I'm going to mispronounce his name if I try to, so I'm going to leave it up to you.
Yeah, Jack Bomeister coming in from Utah. That's a big get for the Longhorns because, to your point, Rod, that 37.8 average for Michael Kern. Well, Bomeister's sitting right around 44.5, 44.7. That's almost a full first down. And when you talk about field position, well, look no further than the Georgia game, the first one at home, in which Texas was playing desperately behind the chains, if you will, when it comes to punting, field positions, flipping the field, and putting your defense in advantageous positions to make plays. So, yeah, big-time acquisition for the Longhorns in the punting game. And that's one that I think the Longhorns will reap the rewards of very quickly, right?
Yep.
You talk about, some of those instant impact transfers. Well, specialists, you see them immediately. The one thing I wanted to point out for Bomeister specifically is, look, punted the ball 60 times in 2024 at Utah. How about only 4 touchbacks? So when it comes to Texas and finding ways to pin guys deep, we obviously talked about it a couple of years ago when it felt like Keaton Crawford and Keelan Robinson were just back there waiting to receive punts, downing guys inside the 5, inside the 10. If you're able to have a guy with that, that backspin of a guy with a 9-iron, hey, you got something rolling right now. And I think Bomeister is going to be a welcome addition to this specialist group.
Yeah, you're right. He's got a booming leg. He's got, how about this, 13 50-plus yard punts. There were 3 games where he had at least a 60-yarder. 3 games where he had at least a 60-yard punt, averaging almost 45 yards per punt. There is no doubt about him with you. His impact will be felt immediately. Let's think about that. Texas, as good as they were last year, we're talking about them being 114th in field goal percentage. All right. And we're talking about them being 103rd in per punt average. And you're talking about them basically being the last place team in net punting average in the SEC. There's a lot of room for improvement there. And Texas had an elite defense last year. Think about how good the defense was, guys. It was not put in, and we know this from the turnovers for the offense, but they weren't really put in good positions all the time. Man, the special teams probably had its worst, the kicking game overall, worst campaign since Sark has come in. Jeff Banks is a hell of a coach, so this is no indictment on him, but definitely the worst campaign for special teams in the kicking game since Sark has been here.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I wondered a lot last year. Was it the coaching that took a step back? Was it Texas just not having the guys in place to go make a lot of plays in special teams? Because, look, a lot of what we talk about in terms of net yardage on punts rely a lot on your gunners. And we'll talk about that here coming up. But, look, Keaton Crawford, big-time specialist. Keelan Robinson, big-time specialist. They were tremendous in going out 2 years ago and making tackles, pinning the ball deep, making it so that fair catches were forced, right? I think that's an underrated part of the punting game is beating your guy off the line of scrimmage, Rod, running to the point in which the ball is expected to be caught, and forcing a fair catch, because then you negate any type of return, and you kind of put that thought in the brain of the returner saying, I got to hold on to this because they're right in front of me, right? The defenders are creeping up on me very quickly. So I didn't think Texas had that at an elite level last year, right? We talked about DeAndre Moore was one of those guys, Warren Roberson. It took a step back in terms of that elite gunner position, and I think as a result, it hindered the ultimate ceiling of the punting game.
And one of the few things I did well in the NFL was actually being a gunner. So one thing I remember I was told by an NFL coach, man, you're a damn good gunner. I remember to this day, it's probably the only time an NFL coach complimented me and said I was good at something in the league. So I feel like I can talk about this, but I'm with you. I think one of the things that stood out to me, not only in terms of being able to defend the return, but also getting the touchback, not touchbacks, but being able to pin teams deep and avoid the touchback. Right. And I don't know if you have the numbers on how many touchbacks Michael Kern had, but I remember just off the top of my head, so many times where the Gunners they were in a position to be able to down a team deep in their own territory via the punt and just couldn't make that play.
Just missed it.
Yes, and just missed it. And so there's a synchronicity between the gunner and between the punter. And I think they were missing that last season. And for a team that has this much talent, CJ, they should not be lacking at the gunner position, because a gunner just needs freakish athletes who can run, who can accelerate, get off the jam, guys who are aggressive. You have so many of those guys. Now, last year, let me know if I'm wrong. I remember 3 guys mainly having that duty. Of course, it was DeAndre Moore at one point, Warren Roberson at one point, and Ryan Niblett. Those are the 3 guys I remember mostly getting those duties at gunner, right?
Gavin Holmes, another one. So those 4 were specific, or basically the 4 that you saw at any point on punt. But yeah, 100% Rod with you. But to that, look, we knew Keelan Robinson ran a 4.42. We saw Keaton Crawford this past combine run 4.43. Are those guys that we just mentioned, are they all in the conversation for low 4.4s? I think Ryan Niblett was.
Yeah.
But I don't know about the others.
DeAndre Moore should be in that conversation too, but I'm with. I think that, and for me, it's DBs. I just made a random list of just great athletes that should be competing for the gunner spot.
Yeah.
In terms of, it should be basically between your DBs and your wide receivers. And that seems like that's most of it, right? I should get some freak athlete somewhere, but guys who haven't really solidified their role, guys who are still trying to earn the trust of coaches by getting more reps on the field. Man, your Wardell Max, your JJRs, your Jordan Johnson-Rubel, Xavier Filson, Phil Sane, I think he's another guy. Santana Wilson, Aaron Butler's another guy. Where is he? What's his role? The young guys coming in this class: Grayson Littleton, Caleb Chester, Cade Phillips. I don't even know about the young receivers, Jamie Fish and Khalil Lockett. I'm not sure if they're too much divas to be doing stuff like that. Ricky Stewart's another guy, just got that kind of frame that should be able to do it. If I'm the special teams coach, if I'm Jeff Banks, I set aside a few periods this spring, and I say, basically, we double up. We're going to have they call it doubling up. So you have 2 guys defending the gunner, trying to keep the gunner from getting downfield. And we do that drill for about, 10, 15 minutes. And I see who can get off the double jam, number one. Because you can't be a gunner unless I know you can get off the double jam. Because that is one of the toughest jobs in all of football, to get off that double jam.
And it's one of the least fun drills that you could put yourself through.
God, I've ended up under benches on sidelines that ain't mine, right? Trying to get off the double jam. CJ, it's nothing more humiliating than realizing mid-play that I'm done. That I don't think it's horrible. But listen, trust me, everybody's got to deal with that. Find out who can get off the double jam, because a lot of teams in college don't necessarily double jam all the time, but find out who can get off of that. And then if you find out who can get off of that, they definitely can beat a one-on-one jam. There's no question in my mind. And then narrow down the choices from there. Because if you don't have the right attitude, the right mentality, the right aggressive nature to want to get off that double jam, then you can't be my gunner. All right. And that's how kind of I would narrow it down. But there should be no excuse for Texas having lackluster gunners this year with how much talent you have overall in that roster.
I totally agree. And one thing that's really encouraging to me is a couple of those names, Rob, that you mentioned in terms of their football acumen and what they bring to the game intellectually. That's encouraging to me from a gunner's perspective, because we've talked about this on the Winning Drive. And this is just a personal, gripe, if you will. The gunner IQ is up there for me with some of the most infuriating plays that you'll come across in football, for me specifically. You got to find the football and just the wherewithal to know that, can your body enter the zone? Can the ball enter the zone? What are the touchback rules? Can I run out of bounds? Can I touch the ball if I run out of bounds? Yeah. To know what you have in the gunner as an IQ guy, that's just as big as the physical attributes of it. Again, I think 2 years ago when you look at Keelan Robinson, Keaton Crawford, their kind of synergy with Ryan Sanborn, I think it was beautiful.
It was.
It took a step back last year, but some of those guys that you mentioned, Jordan Johnson-Rubel, smart football player. Santana Wilson, smart football player. And then, Rod, here's a sneaky one, Caleb Chester. If he gets that body right, I think he too could be a guy that sneaks into this gunner conversation. But yeah, 100% football IQ at the gunner position, it's up there right below quarterback for me. Got to be smart there.
That's a good point. I agree with you on that, because I always do. I know where you are on the field. All right, be aware. That's football awareness, and you're right, situational awareness to know, hey, the situation I'm in and the rules that apply or applicable at that same time. Good point there. All right, so let's jump from talking about the Gunners, talking about the return game a little bit. And I'll admit, I'm a little concerned about the return game here. So Texas, Matthew Golden and Silas Bowden handled the majority of the returns for Texas last year. Matthew Golden was your kickoff returner. Silas Bowden was your punt returner. 2 of the best in the country, by the way, prior to him even coming to Texas. But I believe Silas Bowden was the backup kickoff returner at times, and Matthew Golden was the backup kind of punt returner as well.
Yeah.
DeAndre Moore was another guy that had some kickoff return duties as well. So DeAndre Moore, I think, even though he's not practicing this spring, and that's another opportunity for someone to showcase their talents here. But DeAndre Moore's the only guy that I have penciled in as, he's a no-brainer kickoff returner. Other than that, there's not a lot of no-brainers. People in the past, Texas is not afraid to put their marquee superstars on kick returns. Matthew Golden, of course, number one receiver on kick return. Xavier Worthy was your number one receiver for years, and he was your number one punt returner. So we know they'll do that. But in your mind, because you've actually seen some of these guys in this freshman class who may be twitchy enough, because you got to be for kick return. Let's start with kickoff return, and then we'll go to punt return because they are very different duties. But kickoff return has got to be a combination of acceleration, burst, some short area quickness thrown in there, then the vision to be able to see things open up in the kick return game. Who in your mind, other than DeAndre Moore, we talked about him, could potentially fill that role on this team?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because last year, look, you really had just about a group of about 4 or 5, and Jaden Blue was amongst them. A lot of those bodies are gone, right? You talk about Matthew Golden kind of leading the charge. You didn't see many returns out of the end zone that weren't from Matthew Golden, right? DeAndre Moore being the guy back there with him. You kind of pencil him in as a guy that you would expect to be in this conversation. But who might join him, I think, is really interesting. I don't know off the top of my head who might be in that conversation. Could you see a Christian Clark if he's fully healthy? Could you see a James Simon, right? I don't know. Texas has trusted some running backs in the past. Obviously, some of those big straight line guys. Savion Red even got some run back in the day. But with Blue specifically, I think making sure that the ball was caught and then using that speed to get going was kind of the focal point of the staff. You need that burst, that short area, that long distance stride. I have a loss right now, Rod. It feels as wide open as just about anything on the field.
Agreed. No. I was doing research. I was like, actually, this is a wide open.
Yeah. And we haven't seen many defensive players in this conversation.
Deshaun Jamison was the only one I can remember that Sark's staff have let return from the defense. Do you remember another one? That's the only one I can remember.
Off the top of my head, probably not. Because also remember, Roschon Johnson was a kick returner for a while too. Like they opted, hey, we're going to use guys that we're familiar with catching the football. We can trust their hands, and we know that they're not going to take a risk or put themselves kind of in that Silas Bolden mold where they're running around, catching the ball on the run, putting the ball in harm's way, if you will. They want trust that the ball will be going to the Texas offense and Steve Sarkisian's play calling before anything else gets in the way.
Yep, and to that point, we talk about punt return. I got one of my favorite tidbits about trust and trusting a return man's kind of natural ability. We'll get into because I think Jeff Bates made a great call when he put Xavier Worthy there. But getting back to punt return, is it possible? Because I put here Ryan Niblett. I know he's looking for a role. Is that a possible role for Ryan Niblett? I feel like I've heard him about switching sides, switching to defense. I've heard about him switching positions. I mean, he seems like he's willing to do whatever it takes to get playing time. Does he have that kind of short area quickness? Is he twitchy enough to be a kickoff returner?
He certainly has the straight line speed, and I think he would be the one exception to the rule, Rod, in terms of defensive players, special teams returning, right? Yeah. Obviously, with his background in handling the football, whether it be at running back, at wide receiver, Texas certainly is familiar enough with his skills in terms of ball handling. I would also add Aaron Butler into that conversation as well.
Love it. He's on my notes.
I think that there's enough wiggle there. And obviously the staff's familiar with what he can do with his hands as well. So Ryan Niblett, DeAndre Moore, Aaron Butler. I think those are kind of the three that I'm looking at right now. But I think there's one that is kind of enticing and maybe more so for punt, Rod.
Say it.
Ryan Wingo.
I know we're thinking of the same guy. I know we're thinking about the same. I said the same thing. Listen, I said kickoff or punt return because I remember watching him in high school. And you've watched some of these other guys. You got eyes on them in the 2025 class. So some guys may not have done it, specialized in that role of return man, but they got a chance to do it occasionally. And he's one of those guys. I remember these are the stats from his junior year. He had 11 kickoff returns, averaged almost 24 yards per kickoff return. He had 6 punt returns for an average of 31 yards per kickoff return and 2 touchdowns his junior year. And I remember saying, dude, what he really surprises me at is he's got a lot of physical freakish traits, but with the ball in his hands, he's really good. That's why Sark likes him on the reverses, because he's really good with the ball in his hands. That is a wild card, and I'm with you, CJ. Great minds think alike. I thought the same thing.
Ryan Wingo is interesting because you don't normally see those 6'2", 200-pound return men, right? You see the Worthies, you see the Blues, you see, Matthew Golden figure, right? When it comes to body type and physiques. But what's interesting is you look at the contact balance, and I think that's why they liked Roshan in those situations as well. A lot of these guys that go down there as gunners and kickoff, Rod, they rely on arm tackling to just kind of get in the way.
You got to take a shot when you get down there, man. You got to take a shot.
and with Ryan Wingo specifically, a guy that we know to be a athletic freak, a 5-star level guy with great speed, that bigger body is going to be a pretty big challenge, I think, to bring down with arm tackling. So I hope he gets a shot, because I think that Texas would be able to draw up enough in the return game to get him loose and get those strides fully going.
Yep, I totally agree. And I guess these are some of the same guys you would consider also in punt. Think about punt return. I know Jeff Banks is all about securing the catch.
Right.
Number one. And that's why I remember the story about Xavier Worthy. He was like, I never returned in high school. I was like, what the hell? But to your point, he's twitchy, great contact balance for a small dude, obviously world-class elite speed, and he got the hands.
Yep.
So the number one job, punt return, I got to secure it, because punt return and kickoff return, very different. Punt return, I mean, you're always under fire. Kickoff return, you got time to get to process everything, and it's a slow developing play. It is not like that at punt return. It's guns a-blazing. So it's a different mindset, but that's why you like receivers back there, somebody who can secure the catch, number one, which is kind of what's your Ryan Wingo thing. And then I need somebody who's twitchy, can accelerate, got the contact balance. So I think DeAndre Moore and also Ryan Wingo kind of fit there too, and maybe your Aaron Butler. I think the same kind of guys fit it. In punt return. Is there anybody that you think may be a better punt return than the kickoff return? Are we talking about the same kind of guys here, just whoever is more compatible with that?
I think Butler would be a better punt returner than kickoff returner. But yeah, other than that, I think it's very much the same. I think DeAndre Moore might be a better kickoff returner than punt returner, given what we know about him and how he kind of moves with the ball in his hand. That start-stop, that first step acceleration. DeAndre Moore's quick, right? But I think with an Aaron Butler, there's a little bit more of that twitchiness immediately, which we've already seen guys like Xavier Worthy, they thrive in that situation. So I like Butler in that role, Rod. If I could throw one other name in punt return, it'd be Jamie French. I really think Jamie French could make an impact here. He's got some movement skills there that I think would translate very well to the punt return game.
I'm glad you said, because I was going to ask you, it's got to be somebody from this freshman class, because it's such a freaky class that's got return capability, and you think it's Jamie French.
I think so.
Okay, I like that. All right, we done kicking game, kicking, punting, and also the gunners and the return. Just real quick, let me talk long snappers. We won't talk long about it. Excuse me, we have Lance St. Louis.
Oh, yeah.
As a long snapper, and Tate Haver, I believe, who is Les Snead's son. I actually got a chance to meet the young man, third Longhorn, great young man. But those guys are young guys, so you got experience returning there, which is one of the biggest issues for a lot of programs. Is long snapper for Texas. You're fine there at long snapper, and you got depth there. Your holders were your punters last season. Looks like that could be the case, especially since you brought in a punter, take on the punting duties. Looks like Michael Kern, Ian Ratliff can end up still with those holding duties as well. Right? I mean, it looks like there are a lot of question marks, but I think this is going to be potentially this could be a feast or famine phase for Texas, meaning really, really good, and then like some really bad moments, or they could really turn around things and get back to being what I've said is the most consistent phase for Texas since Sark has been in special team. Last year was a down year, probably the first down year we've seen from special teams.
I would agree. First down year under Banks, but look, I love when they go into their bag, Rod. It's pretty, right? You talk about the punt blocks with Keelan Robinson back in the day. You talk about the block punt against Oklahoma, right? You talk about some of these reverses. You don't see them often, but when they go into their bag, there's typically something there. Now, the common punt, the common return, that has to be cleaned up, right? You can't have Matthew Golden be tackled at the 12-yard line on the ball that was 8 yards deep. You got to get that cleaned up. You can't have balls rolling into the end zone when it could have been down inside the 7 or 5 or whatever. That needs to be cleaned up. Penalties on punt. That was an issue last year.
Oh, yeah.
Ultimately, though, I do believe that this unit will return to its strength. Historically, under Banks, his special teams units, they're pretty good. I think last year was more an anomaly, and the combination of missed field goals and errant punts, it all just kind of snowballed into the whole unit looking like it was weighed down versus what it actually was.
Yep, and a lot of your special teams are the last 2 recruiting classes you brought in, like a lot of freshmen, a lot of second-year guys. You are loaded with talent in your last 2 recruiting classes. So I expect there just to be just a lift in overall talent, just an upgrade in overall talent.
If I could add one last thing, Rod, I know we're getting out of here. Who's going to be the guy that blocks field goals this year? I know we got Ethan Burke. Ethan Burke up the middle, but Vernon Broughton, you looked at Jermaine Lolay, you looked at Alfred Collins. Those are other big hands that were up there for you. Are you looking at a Cole Brevard or somebody like that? I don't know, but that's going to be interesting. Off the edge, I'm trying to imagine who might that be too.
Oh, that's good, because sometimes it's a speedy guy that knows how to get off the edge, like a Mike Griffin or somebody like that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just a dude who's got enough of that kind of girth that they can penetrate.
They blocked a lot of field goals last year.
Yeah, penetrate and get a paw up. Honestly, I'll say this, because you're right, because Alfred Collins was perfect for it. He just had that build for it. Him and Vernon Broughton were those young guys, and Ethan Burke, the long guys. So I'll say if it's going to be somebody that maybe it could be Lance Jackson's got that kind of body.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Just a big, huge human. It's like all you need him to do is penetrate a yard or two and get the mid up.
Travis Shaw, I think, too. He's got that 5-star first step, which is all you need, right?
Yep. No, because I played with guys like that. I mean, Big Sean Rogers could do that back in the day, and they were just massive humans. And all they do is penetrate a yard or two, and then once they got that hand up, man, trajectory would be less. Yeah, I like that. Good stuff there, CJ. Let me thank another one of our sponsors for our spring position previews before we move on. My Athlete 360. That's right, folks. My Athlete. The future of youth sports is here. It is upon us, and early adopters are already winning. For coaches and trainers, My Athlete 360 is your gateway to growth for yourself and the organizations you represent. Showcase your expertise and connect directly with families actively seeking your skills, all without expensive marketing costs. For parents, we bring trusted athletic opportunities right to your fingertips with customizable filters for age, sport, and budget that will match your child with the perfect coach or trainer. Whether you're a coach building a thriving business, or whether a volunteer coach looking to bring new kids into your youth organization, or a parent seeking quality training, My Athlete 360 makes the connection simple and secure. Don't miss out on the platform that's revolutionizing youth sports development. Download My Athlete 360 today. Your competitive advantage awaits. Thank you very much to My Athlete 360 for being a sponsor of our spring position previews. And thank you, CJ. Great breakdown and great expertise and knowledge as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. And thank you to each and every one of you for watching and for listening. And for CJ and for Matthew, until next time, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Hook 'em horns.
Thank you, Rod.